Let's see. We're bringing him in. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's been a great, busy last 6 months of AI stuff. So I'm trying to stay alive.
Just the last 6 months. I feel like every 6 days is huge in the AI world. It really is like the best place to do content around, or just read about, or listen to podcasts about. Like the AI world is just so fertile, regardless of what you think about like PDoom and acceleration and all that. Just in terms of like the applications, the deals that are getting done, it's fascinating. So yeah, what are you watching today? What are you watching this week? What's most interesting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think continued momentum of 2.5 Pro on the Gemini side. I think obviously
Sure.
a bunch of new OpenAI models, which has been awesome to see. It's also
Yep.
been back to your point about how much fertility there is in like different AI stuff. I
Yep.
think if you look like 2 years ago, it was really just the models, and like the model cadence of launching was like actually quite slow relative to like products. And
Yep.
now we have all these products, which people are really excited about. And like the product innovation actually happens a lot faster. So it's like acceleration across the model category, but also across all the product category. And like there's too much to keep up with at this point.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Are you generally feeling the acceleration? Because I feel like we are seeing acceleration on the product side, and certainly in the fragmentation of models and the specialization of these models. But in terms of just like massive order of magnitude breakthroughs, I feel like when we went from GPT-3 to GPT-4. That was a huge leap. We passed the Turing test. ChatGPT was huge. And then since then, it's been more incremental, extremely valuable, extremely great. I love it. But I haven't seen as many of those like viral moments, Studio Ghibli accepted, probably.
Yeah, I actually think I'll push you on this point,
Sure.
which is I think we've had more of those large moments than I think people appreciate. And I think it's just like, it's actually hard to appreciate some of those moments if there isn't a product experience that brings it to life. And I actually think that's been a lot of the gap. It's like if you look at like multimodal, like the fact that the models can like
Yeah.
with better than just from a multimodal input perspective, better than humans are at like most vision tasks. Like the number of products and like things that that unlocks is like truly mind blowing. If you look at 2 years ago, what you would have had to do to make something work in that ecosystem. And like that is from an order of magnitude of impact, like massive. Maybe it's not as big as like text, but it's still this
Sure.
like huge, massive. And like we're continuing to see that with like,
Yep.
now the models are really good at tools, and now the models can actually generate images and audio and video and all this stuff. So I think we're getting those. I also think our expectations have just gone up so much that
Totally.
we're like, if the thing isn't, brushing my teeth for me, then
Yep.
like, it's no
Yeah.
longer impressive.
Yeah. Yesterday we read a post from Nir Cyan, and it was a screenshot of a definition of AGI. Read it out.
So it was a reminder of how far AGI goalposts have moved, and it's a screenshot. It says an AGI could beat you at chess, tell you a story, bake you a cake, describe a sheep, and name 3 things larger than a lobster. And it's funny because like, okay, we're doing everything except baking you a cake.
Yeah.
And
even then it'll give you a great recipe, and it'll give you a recipe for any type of cake you could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
A sheep-sized cake. Like it can do anything. Anyway, I want to talk about this idea of like the Paro Frontier in AI models. Sean, previous guest on the show, mentioned that Google has been very good at delivering not just high quality models, but affordable models. Has that been a deliberate strategy to try and create the best model at every different price point? Or is that just a natural outgrowth of the engineering culture and the scale of, being a hyperscaler?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of this has been an intentional decision. I think if you look at like specifically 1.5, like the Flash series is really where we sort of landed this point the most. I think recently with 2.5 Pro, it's been the first time that we've actually had like truly one of the most intelligent models available, and relative from a cost perspective, it's still super affordable. But I think it also just like why we've been able to do that and why we focus on it is like goes back to like, Google controls from a product perspective, like all the way to how the models are delivered, to how the models are trained, down to the silicon. So like you can make decisions assuming a bunch of those things are going to be true, which is like a lot of folks don't have the flexibility to make those decisions.
That makes total sense.
And the beautiful thing is like, I think this point goes underscored, which is like, what does this mean? It means that builders have the freedom to do stuff. It's like not that like Google has this really great advantage, and the thing we do with the advantage is find out how to milk money out of people. It's like we have this advantage, and what does it mean? It means the world gets cheaper AI models, and they get to go and build the products, and like the margin for people building AI products actually goes up like the farther you push the Pareto frontier, the more money builders get to make, which is like such a interesting and like unique thing about this AI moment that I actually don't think has been true in a lot of these other platform shifts that have happened in the past.
Yeah, I want to dig in there. Google's in a unique position in that it's a consumer tech giant, but also a scaled infrastructure provider with GCP. And you could see,
not to mention a B2B player. I mean, I don't know a single startup that doesn't run on Google Workspace.
100%.
Right.
And so you, like Ben Thompson was just talking yesterday about, he's really pushing OpenAI to just go full consumer and let Microsoft handle all of the B2B stuff. Don't let the API load take away from serving your consumers. With Google, there's probably some sort of tension there, but what are you excited about on the B2B side, and this idea of like, oh, if I build a wrapper, is Google going to like just steamroll me? This is kind of like an old meme, but now, it seems like the best time ever to build on top of the like 2.5 or any of these different models that have great cost and like scores and benchmarks and whatnot. So what message are you sending to kind of the developer community?
Yeah. So two things. One, a reaction to your first comment, which is around like, is there value in doing both consumer enterprise and some of these other things? I think my push for companies, like if you're in the position to be able to do that, and like there's a bunch of nuance to this, because obviously OpenAI as an example is like extremely well capitalized, et cetera, et cetera. Like they have the means to do this and do it well. But for companies that can, I think part of my core worldview is a lot of the reason that ChatGPT has been as successful as it has is because there was an API business built around it. And if you think about it through this lens of what the API business did was like allow this like massive proliferation of AI products to educate the masses that people are interested in this stuff. And then like at the end of the day, who has the world's best AI product? I think like, some people maybe argue it's ChatGPT, maybe it's another product, but like you sort of whet the appetite of the world that like, oh, I can actually do these things, and it's, in my product surface or et cetera, and all that's enabled by the API. And then when you look for like, okay, what's the best way for me to use this product? Maybe it's one of those consumer products made by one of the larger labs. And I think that playbook actually works a lot. And that's why I'm extremely bullish for people who are sort of doing both of these things. I think to your question about like, where's the value for builders today? I 100% agree with you. I think there's so much value to be created at the application layer. Mm-hmm. If you look at, I think about these like three curves at the same time. There's like, on one hand, the cost of AI going down into the right, cost of AI down 99% over the last 2 years. The intelligence of AI is up and to the right. Like models continue to get smarter and better with test time compute and scaling and stuff. At the same time that the models are getting smarter, the costs are going down. Consumer understanding of AI is going up. And then in parallel to that, as consumer understanding is going up, as the models are getting better and cheaper, consumer willingness to pay for AI products is also going up. And I think there's this, like, it's this beautiful, like you actually could not ask for a better set of 4 lines on a graph than those 4 things if you're building a product. It's cheaper for you to build a product. Your customers are willing to pay more. There's more customers. And the tool that's actually enabling the value creation is just getting better for free. Like you don't have to do anything. It just gets better for you. And like, I don't think there's been a time in human history where for builders, all 4 of those things have happened at the same time. So I'm super excited. Like I literally wake up every day excited because people are building companies and all this is happening for them.
How do you think about balancing, benchmarks and capabilities, right? Google's consistently been a leader, yet at the same time, every consumer at this point has experienced a new model coming out, performing well on benchmarks, just sort of like broadly, not talking about any one lab, but then being sort of disappointed with the actual like experience with the model. And I'm sure you've spent a lot of time thinking about this.
Yeah, this is one, I think, for folks who haven't thought about this, evals are just really hard. It's like such a hard problem. And actually, like if you abstract evals out of like AI and into everyday life, like you become surprised. Maybe I'm like too eval pilled at this point, but I think about just like random problems in life are truly eval problems, and like we look at them as this like very human thing, and actually they're eval. And then like the sort of really weak version of this is if anyone's had a job and like have gone through like performance review, like performance reviews are an eval. Like, are they a super scientific eval? Like, no, they're actually a pretty crabby eval in a lot of ways. If folks have gone through performance reviews, and yet like that is the core foundation of like how human, career growth goes in a lot of ways. Like there's a lot, like evals are generally a really hard problem. For AI, they're also extremely hard. And I think, to answer the question specifically, Jordy, about like what does that mean for people who have this sort of disconnect between capabilities and what the evals say? I think this goes to like why there's so many like vibe evals. And if you look at like Ella Marina is a good example of this. Like Ella Marina is basically capturing vibes. It's like, how do people feel about this thing? It's not scientific. They're not actually evaling that the model is saying things that are true. It's like, how do humans feel about this response? And I think that's incredibly important. Is that the only thing that matters? Like, certainly not. But I think more and more you see launches happening where like the vibes are really important in addition to the actual quality of the models being important. And I do think you could do both of these things. In some cases, there's tension, but I think you have to do both if you want to be successful.
Totally.
How do you think about the different buckets of foundational research that are happening? Do you believe in the data wall, the pre-training scaling rule, like kind of hitting diminishing marginal returns? We've talked to a lot of folks who are extremely excited about reinforcement learning, reasoning, going a lot further there, program synthesis, these kind of topics, even just more tool use. Let's bring more tools in. Google has a million tools and a million interesting APIs, both internally and some externally. It feels like there's a lot of low-hanging fruit there. But what excites you on the research side these days is just, let's build an even bigger data center. You guys probably already have the biggest ones in the world, but you could obviously go bigger. Or is it more algorithm-based? How are you thinking about the future of the foundation model landscape developing?
Yeah, I think 2 points. One, I think there's never been more opportunities to push the frontier. Like I think all of those examples that you just described, like because the models are evolving more than just being models, and like there's like systems that have tools and all this other stuff together. I think it just increases the number of opportunities for scale and for the models to get better. So I think that's like one of the positive things. We'll continue to see a lot of growth, specifically because there's so many dimensions that you can make the models better at. But I think if you look at like an example of this in practice, like 2.5 Pro is actually an example where it wasn't just like RL scaling that made that model better. Yes, RL was part of the story, but like there was also a bunch of pre-training innovation, and principally there was a ton of post-training and pre-training innovation. So I think like it's not that companies are going to continue to see value created across all of those. And the really magical thing is like, and this is why like I don't subscribe to the like pre-training is dead and all that stuff, because the more work that you can do at the pre-training level, those capabilities as you do post-training and as you give the models RL capability, it's like the capability is like amplified almost exponentially. So like if you can make the model 3% better at the post-training level, when you actually finally do all the reasoning work and the model like has to reason through really complicated problems, it's like many multiples of bang for your buck because of that. So like I think we need to continue to do the innovation across all levels, and like that's exactly what we're doing right now.
I know you probably can't talk about specifics, but one of my favorite Google stories is that crazy anecdote about the V8 JavaScript engine. I think it might be apocryphal, but it's like a bunch of Google engineers go out to like Iceland or something, spend like a month building a new JavaScript runtime. It builds Node, and it winds up being like the foundation of like the Chrome browser. I'm interested to hear like what is your take on just lower level optimization? Obviously, Google's already doing the TPU, but in terms of just maybe even just squeezing extra performance out of inference. We saw this with DeepSeek. It seemed like they did not just one or two breakthroughs in terms of kind of cost performance optimizations, but they did a ton. Is that type of work happening at Google? Do you want to see more of it? Is it an exciting area, or is it just like, oh yeah, that's just something that we're going to have to do. It's going to have to happen at some point, but it's not as critical as some of the other stuff that's happening in the industry right now.
Yeah, you should ask our inference engineers who are working like 24 hours a day. I think like 2.5 Pro has actually been like a fundamental example of this. Like all of this stuff matters. Like I think if you're not doing it, like especially with larger models and especially with models that have lots of demand, like there's no world where you can get away with not putting a large order of magnitude of investment into inference. And like I think credit to our team who's like actually working around the clock right now to make it so that people can keep scaling with 2.5 Pro, because there's so much demand and we're having to like, as an artifact of the constraints that we're under, like we're having to innovate and like solve new problems and come up with things to like find ways to make 2.5 Pro more scalable from an inference perspective. So it's awesome to watch that happen.
Yeah.
Where do you want to see more, knowing 2.5 Pro's, capabilities probably better than anyone else? Where do you want to see more developer activity?
Yeah, I think the thread right now that has the most excitement is around coding, just because like developers love coding. There's like so much, the whole vibe coding thing is a real phenomenon. I think I continue to be interested in like all the multimodal stuff. Like there's just so many products, and like I think back to early in my career when I trained computer vision models and like deployed them, and like the amount of time that it took and the amount of resources to do that relative to today, where you can literally just write a prompt and send images or videos to the model and have it do those tasks like with basically, near or better accuracy than you would get from domain specific models, is absolutely fascinating. Like I think we haven't actually seen that wave of like multimodal startups that are like building on top of this stuff. And I think that includes like audio things. Like I think the audio ecosystem is like still pretty nascent. Like I think the foundation is being laid for that. Like, people saw this with Gemini Live, people saw this with the ChatGPT version of the product that came out, but I don't think we've seen like across other product surfaces, people actually invest in like real-time audio and real-time video and image stuff. And I think that's like the next iteration of the UX of how people are going to interact with AI models. And the foundation is all there. It's just like the lag of how long it takes people to build interesting products. Like it just takes like 12 months or something like that for that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of like building new products, I love the Paul Buchheit story of building Gmail as this like almost like April Fool's project, and then you see a seed of that in the Notebook LM project. What's the culture like around the idea of like 20% time? Does that even exist anymore? And then if I joined Google, could I just go and say like, hey, I'm gonna go like build an AI native email client? It might destroy Gmail, but we'll figure it out. Or is that something that like, we're going to need to think about, because like Gmail's mature, but there's still like right now Gemini is like kind of being vended into Gmail, but maybe there's an entirely new paradigm at some point. How do these like side projects and 20% time work at Google these days?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think my 200% project is on all the Gemini developer stuff. So I do think people are doing 20% projects, which I think is great. Like I think if you have freedom to do that, like you should, and that's how Google's going to come up with innovation.
Yeah.
I think for Notebook LM specifically, it came out of Google Labs, and like Google Labs, the whole point is come up with new product services. So not just Notebook LM actually, but there's like a whole like Whisk. If folks have seen Whisk, it's like a video image generation platform that came out of that. Actually, AI Studio, the product that I work on, came out of Labs originally and Josh Woodward's team. So I think there is like a whole lot of innovation that's being seeded out of that group. And again, it's like the big bold bets that like you wouldn't see coming out of other, potentially other product areas, because it just like takes time to build these products from scratch, and oftentimes time that they don't have. But I'm super happy because Josh Woodward, who leads the Google Labs team, now also leads the Gemini app team. So I think we're going to see that like fusion of all of these like new ideas and product spaces, because him and his team sit so close to like the blank slate, let's build any product to solve problems that people have. Now that they also run the Gemini app, I think we're going to see like a ton of explosion. You should have Josh on. He's one of my favorite people.
Yeah, we'd love to.
How do you think about how do you think about almost like prompting new consumer behaviors? Because I feel like every day on X, you'll see somebody that's like, I saw somebody post, oh, I'm doing, basically like run it, doing a prompt every day about like a specific industry, like, pull together, the most important headlines and news from this industry. And I'm like, oh, that's really valuable to what we're doing. Yeah. We should just sort of like get into the office in the morning, adopt that and do that. Yeah. And that's something I wasn't really thinking about. People are so used to like, this sort of idea of like just getting, they'll like adopt a model for like one specific thing and then they just like do that. Maybe they veer out of it a little bit, but how do you think about getting users to just like be more creative? Obviously is helpful when a developer builds an application to like prompt a new consumer behavior, but how do you think about that kind of at the application layer at Google?
Yeah, I actually, my personal take on this is I think this is a bug of this current AI moment where like if you look at like what is the ideal case is the models and the products like pull out what they need to from the user in order to create value for them. And I think if you look at like how all AI products basically work today, you as the user, the burden is on you to create value with this tool. And I think that just like one inherently like limits the number of people who are going to get value, but two is also just like a shitty experience, honestly. Like I hate, like this is my biggest qualm with AI tools, which is like you have to go for most AI tools, you have to go to and like make this like sizable investment in order to get anything out of this. I think like a couple notable exceptions to this is like deep research. I can just fire off the like random question that I have about how something works, and then I'm given a 50-page research report inside the Gemini app, and then I can one click turn that into an audio, like a Notebook LM audio overview. And like that's great because like as a user, I don't need to make this like large order of magnitude of investment. The model does all the work for me. And I think as we see more experiences like that, like I'm super excited. So like I'm almost, and this is maybe too like absolutist of like a product perspective, but like I will not build a product that like we have to try to convince a consumer to change their behavior, because I think actually the promise of AI is that these tools are going to be able to like pull this context out of you, and you should just go and build that product. And like I think the models are actually good enough in a lot of ways to help you do that today without having to like rely on a user hopefully having the right behavior to make that product successful.
No, it's an interesting thing where I feel like users are so trained on like software doing a specific thing that this dynamic of software and this sort of application being able to act like a smart friend or a smart coworker that knows infinite more information about a bunch of different subjects and then can help you accomplish tasks is very different than this sort of. And I just feel like even as somebody who's, I've now I'm not 30 yet, but I've basically spent 20 years using software that behaves in a very specific way, and I need to just like totally reimagine how to use software.
Mm-hmm. I think the push needs to be though that like you don't have to reimagine. Like I think about this all the time. Like the thing that I would love is the AI tools that I have today interact with me like I already interact with software today. Like shoot me a text, shoot me an email, call me on the phone. Like I'm already doing that all day. Like there are ways I think to bridge that experience gap where like you don't need to you don't need to go into a new flow. And I actually think if we fast forward like 10 years, I do think there's going to be a lot of those experiences which like look eerily similar to the way that they do today, because it's just like so ingrained in like human culture, like how like texting is a great example of this.
Yeah, like I want to push notification from Gemini that says, hey, you're talking with Logan later. Be sure to ask him about this funny story, and then it's like, boom. And I didn't even have to, have to.
Everything in AI, we're kind of reinventing from first principles. Like even just like the idea of like the cron job, we're like adding that back in, and now like there'll be like a whole news cycle from like, oh, like the AI apps got cron jobs this week. Like that's incredible. And it's like, yeah, but this has been around for a long time, but it really does transform the experience. I mean, speaking of, I want to know more about some of your specific workflows that you're enjoying. You mentioned deep research into Notebook LM. Is that something that you're able to do within aistudio.google.com and run it all there? Or is there like a copy paste step? Because I've had to do that before where I've been like, okay, I got a deep research report. It's not reading it to me here, at least in ChatGPT. I need to take it over to Speechify and get it to read it to me there. But obviously AI Studio is a little bit more prosumer. I feel like there's a lot. I mean, the temperature is there. There's like still some buttons that are almost like developer terminology. So walk me through some of your favorite AI use cases in AI Studio and what you're getting the most value out of, so people can just kind of copy your prompts.
Yeah, John, I think this is actually a great reminder for folks. Like AI Studio is a developer product. Like, so we're building it for developers, and like the use case that we're trying to build for is like showcase all of the model's raw capabilities so that you understand what the models are capable of, so that you can go and build great products yourself. Like we're actually not, so like deep research as like a great example of this. Like deep research is built on top of a bunch of capabilities that the model has, which is like native search functionality, tool calling, et cetera, et cetera. And that's available in the Gemini app. So if you're, you want the like polished consumer experience or even prosumer experience, honestly, like the Gemini app has that functionality. It has audio overviews. It's like a fully baked product. AI Studio is like, give you the rawest possible experience. And like some consumer AI enthusiasts like that experience, which is why they come to AI Studio. But like generally we're trying to showcase like frontier capabilities, show you the art of the possible so that you can go and build the products that you really like. So I do spend a bunch of my time from like doing work perspective inside of the Gemini app. Canvas is another one of them, like vibe coding inside of Canvas, inside the Gemini app is a lot of fun.
Someone needs to vibe code a Google Reader. This would be the most viral thing ever. I don't know. Are you familiar with Google Reader?
Probably before my time.
It was like an RSS reader, and Google shut it down, and like it had like 1,000 true fans, and so they were like so upset about it. I was using it. It was fun, but I understood that they didn't need it. But anyway, so continue.
We'll see what we can do. Maybe we'll bring Google Reader back as a vibe coded app.
You would destroy the internet. That would be the greatest marketing for everything that you're doing if you could bring back Google Reader. Anyway, sorry. I want to let him finish about his like most interesting like AI use cases and what's fun and what's in your everyday carry in the AI world.
Yeah, I think the only other one that I'll mention is in AI. This is something that's specific in AI Studio right now, and we'll hopefully have it in the Gemini app and other places. Is we have this like live API or this real time mode where you can go and screen share and like show the model what you see on your screen. I think this gets to like all the points that I was getting at before about like, why is this such a magical experience? It's because right now, the product experience of using AI is I need to go and find all the context that's relevant for the model and get it into this text box somewhere or get it into this list of files somewhere. And like the beautiful thing about screen sharing is like, all of the context that I need the model to do stuff with is already on my computer. I'm looking at it somewhere on my computer. I looked at it today or yesterday or right now. Like, just let me show the model what I see and have it do interesting stuff. So I've been playing around with a bunch of like pair programming examples like that, and just like generally like critiquing work that I've done and having the model sort of watching and with my permission able to see the things that I see and talk to it is a super cool, like very futuristic feeling experience.
That's awesome.
Last question, switching gears a little bit. Do you have any, ignoring your work at Google and on Gemini, do you have any takes on AI hardware? Do we need new hardware devices? Is it an area that you're excited about, or how do you think about that generally?
Yeah, I think on both sides, from an enterprise and consumer side, I think there's a lot of opportunity. And I think in the platform shift, like it makes sense to try to build something. I think like, does it end up working? I don't have the crystal ball, but I think on the enterprise side, the opportunity is you go in and build, hardware that makes LLMs a lot faster and more efficient. And I think that's warranted and somebody should do that work.
And then on the even consumer side, I'm curious. We had like the founder of Cluely, which has been going viral on before you, and he was talking about how the end state is just being embedded into the brain directly. But I'm excited.
I mean, you can feel free to pass on this question, but the founder of Cluely, he applied for a job at Amazon. He cheated on the LeetCode code questions. If he were applying to be on your team, you caught him cheating. What's the punishment? Is he on the team or is he out forever?
I think we've actually been looking at doing like AI assisted interviews and not AI assisted interviews. Like I think the world needs both right now. It makes perfect sense to evaluate both.
Yeah. Kind of an interesting. I mean, he was doing it as like a publicity stunt, basically trolling. Obviously, I don't endorse actually cheating on real interviews, but it is interesting that like you will have to adapt, just like the teacher will have to adapt that was previously assigning research papers that can be one shot by ChatGPT.
No, it's an interesting way to test how somebody works individually,
Totally.
right? Single player, and thinking about AI assisted as this sort of like multiplayer experience. How do you collaborate with other people, right? And that's like a really good eval, as you said.
And in a world where the tools like actually make a difference in how much you can do, like, can you use the tools? I think that's like a fundamental question that I don't think a lot of people ask in these job interviews. Like, are you AI assisted in what you're doing today? And if you're not, like, you know, it's there's a delta in your output if you are AI assisted versus not, across coding, across every discipline right now.
Totally.
Awesome. Well,
this
thank
has
you
been
so much.
awesome. Come back. I'm sure you're going to have many big announcements this year. Always welcome to come on and jam with us. Thank you for making the time.
Bye, guys.
Awesome.
See ya.
Talk to you soon.